In the 2008 superhero film Dragonfly, we are introduced to Rick, a high school student who lives a life of isolation and torment. Bullied relentlessly by his peers, particularly by the school's alpha jerk, Lance Landers, Rick's existence is a daily struggle. His only solace comes from his best friend, Trey, and his secret crush on Jill Johnson, a girl who barely acknowledges his existence. Jill, unfortunately, is dating Lance, which only adds to Rick's feelings of inadequacy and loneliness. Rick's life is a monotonous cycle of humiliation and invisibility, but all of that changes during a fateful school trip to a cutting-edge animal research laboratory. The story begins with Rick and his classmates boarding a bus for a field trip to a state-of-the-art animal research facility. The lab, led by the enigmatic Dr. Strom, specializes in genetic modification, creating animals with extraordinary abilities. Rick, ever the outsider, sits alone on the bus, observing the social dynamics of his classmates. He dreams of a life where he isn't the target of ridicule, where he can stand up to Lance and maybe even win Jill's affection. But for now, he remains invisible, a ghost in the crowded halls of Empire City High School. When the class arrives at the lab, Dr. Strom greets them and explains the groundbreaking work being done there. The animals in the lab are genetically enhanced, possessing unique traits and abilities. Rick, fascinated by the science, wanders off to explore. He notices Jill observing a genetically modified bird and tries to strike up a conversation, but his awkwardness only pushes her further away. Determined to impress her, Rick decides to take a photo of the bird for the school newspaper, despite Dr. Strom's explicit warning not to photograph the animals due to their sensitivity to light. Rick's decision to take the photo sets off a chain reaction of chaos. The bird, overwhelmed by the flash, spontaneously combusts. Panicked, Rick tries to extinguish the flames, but in his desperation, he accidentally kicks the burning bird toward Lance. The bully, enraged by Rick's clumsiness, lunges at him, ready to deliver another beating. Jill tries to intervene, but Lance's anger is uncontrollable. The situation escalates until Lance's uncle, Lou Landers, the lab's chief executive, steps in to defuse the tension. Lou recognizes Rick's last name and reveals that he knew Rick's parents, who died tragically years ago. Rick, now living with his aunt and uncle, is haunted by the memory of his parents' death. During the conversation, Rick notices that Lou appears unwell, but the man brushes off his concerns. Meanwhile, Lance, seizing the opportunity to humiliate Rick further, pushes him into an area filled with animal excrement. Desperate to clean himself, Rick grabs a bottle of what he thinks is water, but is actually a powerful pheromone designed to stimulate reproduction in the lab's animals. The pheromone attracts a swarm of genetically modified creatures, including a dragonfly that bites Rick's neck. Unbeknownst to Rick, this bite will change his life forever. That evening, Rick's health takes a dramatic turn. He experiences severe symptoms, but his aunt and uncle dismiss them as a side effect of puberty. Meanwhile, at the lab, Lou Landers undergoes a dangerous experiment to extend his life. The experiment goes awry, granting Lou the ability to drain the life force of others, but at a terrible cost. He becomes a shadow of his former self, desperate to sustain his newfound power. The next morning, Rick wakes up feeling stronger than ever. The bite mark has disappeared, and he notices strange changes in his body. His reflexes are sharper, his strength is heightened, and he feels an energy coursing through him that he can't explain. Confused and intrigued, Rick turns to the internet for answers. He stumbles upon a mysterious user who claims to know what's happening to him. This user, who goes by the name Charles Xavier, promises to help Rick understand his new abilities. Rick's journey takes him to Xavier's School for Mutants, a hidden institution for individuals with extraordinary abilities. There he meets a host of iconic characters, including Wolverine, Storm, and the Invisible Woman. Xavier explains that Rick's bite has unlocked latent mutant genes, granting him superhuman abilities. Rick begins to embrace his new identity, crafting a superhero persona, Dragonfly. With Xavier's guidance, Rick learns to control his powers and understand the responsibility that comes with them. Rick's first act as Dragonfly occurs when he saves an elderly woman from an oncoming truck. His incredible strength and speed are on full display as he stops the truck with his bare hands. However, his inexperience leads to a mishap, as the woman ends up in a crusher. Despite this, the public begins to recognize Dragonfly as a symbol of hope. Rick's confidence grows, but so does the threat posed by Lou Landers, who has fully embraced his dark transformation into the villainous Hourglass. Hourglass, driven by his need to drain the life force of others to sustain his own existence, becomes a grave threat to Empire City. Rick's journey is marked by moments of self-doubt and heartbreak, particularly when Jill discovers his secret identity and confesses her feelings for Dragonfly. The emotional weight of his dual life takes a toll on Rick, but he remains determined to protect the city and those he loves. The climactic battle between Dragonfly and Hourglass takes place during a high-profile award ceremony. Hourglass plans to drain the life force of the attendees, but Rick, now fully embracing his role as Dragonfly, intervenes. The battle is intense, with Hourglass using his titanium blades and life-draining abilities to overpower Rick. In a final act of heroism, Rick sacrifices himself to save Jill and the city, detonating a bomb that seemingly kills both him and Hourglass. The explosion leaves Rick critically injured, but in a twist of fate, his Dragonfly wings emerge, allowing him to save Jill and soar through the skies as the city's true